he saved my life in more ways than one. And so I was able to identify what was actually going on. And then I controlled my own stuff. It's like I didn't expect grants from the government. I didn't expect any of these things, like no one to just come swoop in and save me and give me hundreds of thousands of dollars to fix my situation. It's like, dude, you make good money, just retool it, retool your mind, and have laser focus on the things that are going to kill you first. And then we can talk about other things, right? And at the end of the day, building meaningful wealth is not a sexy thing. It is, I mean, at the end of it, it's great. It's fantastic. It looks
Yep.
sexy. That doesn't happen overnight. Um, a lot of people like to think it does, but it's really basic things like controlling ourselves, controlling our emotions, controlling our impulses, right? If I really want to buy this thing, it's so hot, I want to get it. Wait a day.
My name is Thad David. I'm a former Marine Recon Scout sniper with 2 deployments to Iraq. As a civilian, I've now facilitated hundreds of personal and professional development trainings across the country. And it struck me recently that the same things that help civilians will also help veterans succeed in their new roles as well. Join me as we define civilian success principles to inspire veteran victories. Welcome to another episode. I'm here again with a former EOD technician, Jay Lee. Jay Lee come to us from Golden Compass. He is a personal finance, leadership, and communications coach. What's going on, Jay? How you doing, man?
Hey, Thad, happy to be back. Thanks for having me again. This is great.
Absolutely, man.
Love having these conversations with you.
I feel like every time I jump on the phone with you just to have a conversation, I wish I was recording it because the stuff that you preach, the stuff that you talk about is just brilliant. So I'm just happy that you were able to jump back on and take some time, man. Thank you.
Well, I will do my best to live up to that.
Well, and just the other day we were talking about it. You were sharing how you go in and you do contracting work for the military, where you go in and you teach people how to, essentially they know how to skydive, but you teach them how to not just survive, but how they can actually go out and thrive with it. And you shared some interesting stories and videos, just the ways that you approach this process. Do you mind just unpacking a little bit of that conversation about how you go about that?
Yeah, yeah. And the people that, that I'm working with, that I'm coaching, they're not just off the street trying to learn how to skydive for the first time. I mean, I do that too, but this is like predominantly when I'm working these contracts, it's military guys. They're in special operations forces or naval special warfare, and or they're, other EOD guys. And you think that, I mean, the general consensus is that if you're in one of these communities, the personnel that are in these communities have nerves of steel, just like not afraid of anything, like ready to rock. But at the end of the day, everyone is a human being and they all have their angst and fear and, whatever the case may be. And we are just trying to eliminate that or minimize it as much as possible by getting them more comfortable, being more proficient in their skill set.
Hmm. And it just made me think of just being at First Recon. We had a guy that, I won't throw his name out there, but he was deathly afraid of needles. And so every time we would do these, our SARC corpsmen that we had would show us how to just tap into veins. And that was when he would just lose his mind. He just hated it, just deathly afraid of just needle. He would do all the hardest stuff anybody's ever thrown at him, but put a needle in his arm and he is about to pass out. So I can definitely...
He'd take a bullet for his buddy, but I'm not doing an IV.
Yeah, you can't practice IVs on me. It was wild. So, hey, what is it like? I mean, how do you get comfortable with that? Because I think that's what I loved about it is so many different directions. But what would you do? I mean, what does it take to get comfortable in that type of situation? If I'm really afraid to do this, where does that comfortability come from?
Yeah, there's really no difference than, aside from a few thousand feet, than anything else that you want to get good at, right? You have to do it often and a lot. There's a Venn diagram of like people that get injured in free fall operations. And there's, how I explain it is, in one circle, you have currency. So people that are current in their skill set, right? You have that over there. And then you have another circle over here that is proficiency. Who has done it a lot, right? Who has done it recently? Currency. Who has done it a lot? Proficiency. And then the intersection is who has done it very frequently and a lot. That little sect are the people that typically don't get injured, right? It's the ones that are in those other ones that are not very proficient, but they're current, or very proficient, but they're just not current. They haven't done it in a while. And then obviously everyone outside of there is a risk. So we're trying to really hone in that center section and get proficient and current. And we do that by really just a lot of reps and very fine-tuned coaching, right? We take videos of everything so we can see, we can talk to someone, get their thought process. We have video footage of exactly what happened. So it's not like, hey, I'm instructor J, and I have it out for you and I just want you to fail, right? That's not the case, right? I have video footage of your arm like kind of all jacked up and it needs to be more in the wind. Um, but sometimes, right, when it's early out, it's just like we get so tense. It's like, oh, like because I have to deal with this fear and angst of exiting an aircraft at 10,000 feet or higher, and I'm like, okay, I'm so amped up, and I'm just like every muscle in my body is just flexed to the max that I cannot. I don't even know that this limb exists, right? I have no idea where that is in time and space.
Mm.
So now, when we review the videos, I can show them it's like, regardless of what you thought you were doing, this is what your body was actually doing. And they're like, oh man, that is crazy. Cause I could have sworn my arm was like this, when in reality, it's just like straight out. And now we can actually fine tune that's like, okay, so let's isolate that. We've identified the problem. We get to the root. We need to relax because you're super tense and just relax. I say the key for skydiving at least, right? And we're gonna extrapolate this in a minute, but for skydiving, the key is in your shoulder, right? If you can relax your shoulder, the rest of your body will follow. Um, because if I'm out here and if I make a fist as hard as I possibly can and someone pushes me, my whole body will move. But if I relax my shoulder, my arm, I can move my fingers. Someone moves my hand is the only thing that will move. So now if I do that in the sky, I'm relaxed. I'm relaxing my arms. Now I can actually feel what the wind is doing to my body. And if I'm turning, I know to counter that, right?
Mm.
I'm obviously not going to talk about all the body mechanics of how to turn and stuff like that. We don't have time, but
Yeah.
yeah, that's like once you can feel the air and you can control your own emotions in your own body, now you can feel the air and you can fly, you can control what the air is doing, right? You're flying the air, not the air blowing you around and doing whatever it wants with you, right? And that is what we can extrapolate to literally anything else in your life. You just apply those same principles of controlling your body, your own mind, because at the end of the day, those are the only things that you can control. Um, really, I mean, 100% of the time is
Oh yeah.
yourself and your body and your mind. So once we learn how to do that, that unlocks potential beyond belief for every aspect of our lives.
Mm. And so, what other? Well, I might be getting far ahead because the other question I wanted to ask inside of that too is: it sounds like you have a goal, like they want to get better at skydiving, they want to get more comfortable. So they've identified this target goal. They're getting reps in, getting some video evidence, and then going back and reflecting on it. And then with that evidence, because I think a lot of people don't do that. We don't have a lot of goal setting. We don't do a lot of tracking of how things are going. In general, it seems like that's essentially what you're doing out there with all of these men and women that are attempting to get better with this.
Yeah, yeah. The goal, like good metric, is always just have a good metric. I mean, and for us, it's like we start out very basic. It's like I want you to be right in front of me, no more than 2 feet away, and I want you to pull your parachute without sliding around. Right? I want you to be boom, head up, and once we attain that, now we can move on to something else. But until we get to that point, and this is a lot of personal growth also, because I can have video, right, and I can tell you exactly what you need to do. You can watch it. Like if I'm video debriefing Thad, who might be a sky god. I don't know.
Not, not at
We haven't
all.
really talked about that, but I can give you your video debrief, and it's up to you to be like, okay, yeah, like I totally get that, and I can see. Or I do get this a lot, unfortunately, where it's like, I hear what you're saying, but I really think that I need to do this instead, right? And we do that so often with a lot of other things in our lives, where it's like, I have video proof of what you're doing, right? And this is essentially when we're having that conversation with ourselves in the mirror. Like we can't BS that person. It's like, I know exactly what happened, and I know what we need to do, me and you,
Yep.
and who's looking at me in the mirror. But then we justify doing something else. Like, no, it's just like, we just got to do this other thing instead. And it's like, we know what we have to do, but we're going to do something else because we think that we know best, right? When the person that's really trying to keep you on a straight line and hold you accountable, which is self accountability, is huge. Um, yeah, it's just like once if you stray, you're never going to grow. But once you listen to what is being said to you and you're being coached, and you're just like, okay, I got this outsider's perspective, I have it on video. And it's like, man, I just need to relax his shoulder, and everything will be better.
Hmm. So, and you have people that were you saying you have people that are watching this video that will also say, I see it, I hear it, and I'm still going to do my own thing?
Oh
Is
yeah,
that,
yeah,
oh,
it's incredibly frustrating.
okay.
And that's a growing experience for me, because like that's gonna happen. And it's like,
Yeah.
okay, now how do we deal with the situation? It's like, cool, great. You know, you do have, even though you have a fraction of the amount of jumps I have, but you're probably right. You probably know exactly what you need to do. So I don't even know why I'm here. I don't know
Yep.
why the military, the DoD, is paying me all this money to come and tell you this very thing. But yeah, I
And
mean,
so,
you could that could be in any business, right? Any coach, any trainer, speaker, anything in that realm. It's like you're going to deliver, right? Your offering, your core offering. It's like, here it is. And someone's like, yeah, I got this. Instead, it's like your company paid a lot of money for you to get this training and coaching. So maybe there's something to it that you're just not seeing because you're too close to the situation, right?
yeah. Well, and do you think that's it? That it's just because we're too, like, that individual is too close to the situation?
Could be, yeah. It's not a rubber
Okay.
stamp, obviously.
Yeah.
That is a very common thing that I see. It's like, look, especially in money, right? As personal finance, and even leadership. It's like, look, and I mean, leadership and communication, they're all really
Hmm.
tied to each other. But like, if I'm so close to my money and I think I'm doing the right thing, it's like, okay, cool. That's just me looking at the situation with my blinders on. But now, if I ask you, it's like, hey, what do you think about like how I'm managing this? And do you think I have things going to the right places and in the right amounts and in the right order? Or should I be not doing everything all at once? Or should I be approaching this with a set of steps, a process? Or is there like, what should I be doing here? And then, since I just asked you, and if you tell me, especially if you're an expert in the field, you're like, hey, you're trying to do too much too much of everything all at once. You need to really focus in on these first three things, or maybe even the first one thing. For that first thing, get that knocked out. Put all your energy that you're applying to all of these things into this one thing. You will crush that goal, and then you can move on. You'll crush that one, and so on and so forth. And I can be like, oh man, I just like wasn't even thinking to just not even do all this at once, and use all my energy and try to divide it all up, when I can just really do the bare minimum for all these things and really focus on this, so I can still survive over here, but really intently um, focus on that one thing, and then we can move on. It's like, oh, great, thanks, Dad, for letting me know that. Or and be like, man, that sounds like not what I want to do, so I'm just going to keep living my life like this. And then, you know what? Cool, whatever. You asked me, but um, I'm just like, you will come back eventually when that does
Yep.
not work, because I've seen it, I've done it, and it just it's one of those things where live and learn, right? You can't, if you love something, set it free, right? That's
Yep.
what I use for clients also. It's like, cool, do your thing. I'm not here to control you or do whatever, because at the end of the day, the only person I can control is me. I can't control the actions of others. I can give my best advice. If they follow it, great. They're probably going to save a bunch of money and change their financial picture a lot. But if
Hmm.
they don't, they'll feel the pain, and then they will eventually come back. Maybe. Who knows?
Well,
The
and
goal is for them to come back.
right. Yeah, for sure. Well, because you want, at the end of the day, you want them to succeed, and whatever it
Yes.
is, with the skydiving, personal finance, and in the realm
Yes.
of skydiving, and with this too. And I just want to honor the fact that how many times I've been that stubborn person. Like, I think about it, like, definitely not picking on anybody else, because I think I always look back at myself. I'm like, yeah, I've had some situations where I put my heels on the ground and said, no, no, I don't think that's going to be it. And then I turned around and did it, and I was like, yeah,
Yeah.
turns out that was
Man,
the right thing to do.
man, I wish I did that 5 years ago.
Exactly. So I've definitely been in those shoes as well. But your goal as an instructor is to get somebody, and I love the way that you said it, but just to get somebody to, instead of having the wind, because they jump out of this plane and the wind is just kind of flopping them all around, pushing them wherever it wants to go. The goal is at the end of the day for them to control the wind and not for the wind to control them.
Exactly, right?
What did you
You have
mean by that?
it's instead of just going out and like jumping out, and I kind of joke sometimes, and it's just like, it's like you would think that some of these people that are like in the greatest shape ever, right, are just getting hucked, like we're just wheeling them off in wheelchairs and just like, okay, see you later. But it's like that's not they're just not controlling. They're just like they're so front sight focused, or they have their blinders on, and they're just really focused on not dying, right? That they're not experiencing everything that in free fall, it's very fleeting. It's 60 seconds. So they're so focused on not dying and surviving that it's just it's like a blink and nothing really happens, and the air is essentially blowing them uh, all over God's blue sky, and wherever they end up pulling is where they end up pulling, right?
Yeah.
But when we harness that power, when we relax, control our bodies, we can fly wherever we want. Obviously, within the constraints of gravity, because that's a
Right.
thing also, right? That always
Right.
works. We test it all the time.
Yep.
It works. It works every time. And but yeah, we are able to really manipulate the wind and use it to our advantage and fly just like birds. I mean, obviously we can't fly that far, but
Right.
we can get a lot. We can group up. We can turn points. We can like have we can track in the same direction and like cover ground. We can pull high. We can fly our canopies together at night and land in a very specific spot. Um, Obviously, a lot of calculations go into that, but we can do that once we learn how to control our bodies. Because if we can't control ourselves, if we can't control our bodies and open up at a very specific spot at a very specific time and fly our canopies in a very specific manner, we can't. There's no hope of ever flying together with someone else as a team. And right, that's what we're trying to do is group up as a team and then go to a certain area and then go do our job. And we're trying to retool the minds thinking of, man, this is insane. I'm jumping out of a perfectly good airplane because there's no such thing as a perfectly good airplane. Um, how many times have you been on a tarmac and they're like, oh, we're having some maintenance issue, and then you miss your next flight, right?
Yep.
So there's that. And then we're trying to retool it from like, oh, I'm jumping out of this perfectly good airplane. It's like I'm gonna die doing this. To as I step out of this airplane, it's the same thing as me getting in my car and driving to work. Because at the end of the day, in the military, that's what military free fall is for. It's a means to get to our job. Well, not my job anymore. I'm a free man,
Right.
veteran, boom.
Yep.
And and it's a means to get them to their job. So the safest or the safer that they can do that, the more efficient they can do that, the better off they're going to be, the lower risk of injury they're going to have, and then they can just boogie on and do whatever the taxpayers need them to do.
Mm. There's a couple of things in there, and I want to circle back to one thing that you said. I just want to make sure that everybody caught it and hear you unpack it a little bit more, because you said that people are front side focused. They jump out of the airplane and they're just so front sight focused. And you expanded on it a little bit. What did you mean by people being front sight focused?
It's a military term or expression where it's like you're just staring at the front sight post of your weapon, and which I mean that is a good way to that's how you quickly acquire targets and take them out. But when you're front sight focused, you're focused on the target right in front of you and really nothing else, right? You want to put as many rounds as you can right there in that moment. So I'm going to stare at that front sight instead of just opening the aperture a little bit and seeing around, right? Yeah, there's a time and a place for staring at that front sight and being really honed in, as I talked about, right? Instead of doing all the things at once, maybe stare at that front sight focus, stare at that front, focus on that front sight, knock out a goal, and then shift it to the next one. But it's good. It's a good idea, right? And we do this in softball all the time. I mean, every whether you're recon, SF, Ranger, SEAL, whatever the case may be, you shoot, you look, right? You scan. You're scanning for other threats. Like this is going to kill me right now. Let's deal with that. And now, what else is going to kill me, right?
Mm.
Um, Boom. So we deal with what's going to kill me first, and then is there anything else in this room that is going to kill me next? Right. And as an EOD guy, it's like, there's bad guys that are trying to kill us, and then there's inanimate objects that are going to uh, potentially detonate that are not going to shoot at us, but you can't even, they're not really fighting at us actively. They're just waiting. They're just hiding in the corners, right? Just waiting to go off. So it's like, what is actually going to kill me in here? It may not be a person. It may be this thing that in the corner that I'm not paying attention to, but I got to scan, not be on that front sight, not be on that front sight the whole time, so I can identify the other threats in my immediate vicinity, in my life, right? We can apply it to anything that we do.
Yeah.
In my
But I
relationships,
love,
anything at work, anything.
and that's, I'm glad you touched on it because it really applies to everything. And I want to make sure that everybody understood exactly what that was, because like essentially if you're doing that, you're going to get harmed by so many more other things around you that you didn't see coming. And I
Yeah,
love that comparison. One of those old military terms, I haven't heard that in quite some time, but it applies to so many areas of life. So it's just
yeah,
brilliant, man. It's what I love about getting to chat with you. So, and you also said too that once you learn how to control your own body, that's when you can start to go and really impact other people. You know, you can start to skydive with other people. And I think there's so many things to unpack inside of that. I mean, in life in general, you know, everybody wants to go influence other people when the reality is they can't influence themselves to do something different. And it's
exactly.
such an interesting thing.
Yeah, I mean, this is where I'm sure you've seen it. I've seen it. It's like kind of, it's been like scorching through LinkedIn, where people put like, they take pictures of book lists. Like they'll take a picture of like all the spines of books. Like, so it's like 12 books. Like, these are all the books I'm going to read this year. Great, cool. You know, this is my reading list for this year. And it's like, that's great if you like reading and everything, but like my main mission right now is to read one book that you really are interested in, that you really want to learn, and you really want to apply the principles to your life. Read that book and apply the lessons to your life until it's second nature. Then
Mm,
read a different book, right? And if we can't do that for ourselves, how can we expect anyone to be like, oh, I really think that you should read this book because I love it. And, here it is. Even though I read it once and I love the ideas and I don't do any of them in my ideal, like in
right.
my regular life. But you go ahead, you read it and it'll help you out. It's like, but you're doing, why would obviously you're not doing anything in this book. So what, I mean, yeah, we all like to read a good story. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, you should definitely make time for some fiction. Um, but yeah, when you read some nonfiction, or you're trying to like read something that will better your skill set, or something, apply the lessons to your life and really read it, reread it until it is second nature.
Mm. I love that you brought that up, and it's something me and my buddy, he's a really good friend of mine. We were talking about that same thing there, and we actually committed to each other. He had sent me his top 10 book list. I sent him my top 10 like favorite books, and he picked a book off of my list, and I picked one off of his list, and then we studied each other's book for 3 months, and then presented it and as if we had to give a book report on it. Like, so we sat down and we knew we
I
were
love
linking
that.
up. It was, I learned so much about this book at a really, really in-depth level. And it was a totally different thing versus just reading it once and saying, oh, that was, that was a fun read. It was a really cool thing. But I want to ask you, you said one of your things right now is to do that. Have you selected your one book that you're going to read and commit to?
Oh yeah, and I have to thank you actually for this, Thad, because you're the one that kind of introduced me to this gentleman, Alex Hormozy. We'll plug him on our show. I mean, he'll listen. I mean, he's
Yeah,
great buddies
obviously.
of ours. So I mean, yeah.
Yep.
Um,
Obviously.
but yeah, his his new book, $100 Million Leads. Right.
Yep.
I'm reading it. I listen to it. I read it. Sometimes at the same time. I'll listen to it when I'm in the car. It's like, man, I really like Like, I need to be better at this thing that he's talking about, on how to craft lead ads, right? How do you generate, and how do you even do that? Like, what is the process? Like we're talking about, there's always a process of how to do things. What is the actual process to follow? It's like, okay, I've heard it. I need to read it and try to craft it. And then I'm going to listen to it again because I'm like hitting a roadblock, and really just going to do that until I can have a machine that is essentially generating $100 million leads, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, and thank you so much for introducing me to the world of Alex Hormozy and the game. his
Well,
podcast. But yeah, he's
he's
awesome.
fantastic. He's got some incredible content. So I'd love to hear. I'm actually that's one I'm currently listening to right now, and all my runs is that new one. So it's so far it's been excellent, really good book, which I expect nothing less. Um, Man, well, I love just unpacking this in general and taking this thought process of going from skydiving into, and I know we've touched on personal finance. Like, how do you use these stories and these talking points as it relates to when you're talking to somebody on personal finance and how it can impact their life?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, personal finance, if you don't control, like in free fall, in skydiving in general, if you don't control your body, the wind is going to control you, period. Um, and the same is true for your money. If you don't control your money, a lack of it will control you forever, right? It will create anxiety. It will create just stress of how am I going to pay this thing? I want to get that, but what am I going to do with it? I can take out a loan. Okay, cool, great. Well, now how am I going to pay that bill? I have the thing that it made me happy for an instant, and now it's like now I got to pay these bills on it, and it's just man, it is just a nightmare. It's a nightmare. It's on Instagram and Facebook, it looks great, but then when we actually look at it from our own lives, it's hell. And that's a huge part of my story is just like that nightmare that I essentially created for myself. It's like I almost got my teammates killed. You know, you've talked about this in our previous episode, which everyone should definitely check out.
Oh yeah.
But it is just like once I learned what rewind, once I actually identified what was causing all of the things in my life to go awry and just like blow up my relationships. I mean, I was angry at everyone, super short tempered. I mean, I was not burning bridges, I was detonating them. I mean, you guys, so there you go. Yeah, it was bad. And then my buddy helped me with that budget. It's like, man, this is just like and he was a new guy in my platoon. I was his LPO, his leading petty officer, and so it's like second senior enlisted on the platoon for this brand new guy. And I mean, I'm just like, dude, I you saved my life, and I really can't explain to you why right now. So if it's kind of weird, I lost it. I'm like, but thank you for whatever you're doing. Just keep doing what you're
Mm,
doing. And when people give you pushback, keep pushing forward and getting this to more people because it's so necessary. And I think that's why. And he saved my life in more ways than one. And so I was able to identify what was actually going on. And then I controlled my own stuff. It's like I didn't expect grants from the government. I didn't expect any of these things, like no one to just come swoop in and save me and give me hundreds of thousands of dollars to fix my situation. It's like, dude, you make good money, just retool it, retool your mind, and have laser focus on the things that are going to kill you first, and then we can talk about other things, right? And at the end of the day, building meaningful wealth is not a sexy thing. It is, I mean, at the end of it, it's great. It's fantastic. It looks
yep.
sexy. That doesn't happen overnight. Um, a lot of people like to think it does, but it's really basic things like controlling ourselves, controlling our emotions, controlling our impulses, right? If I really want to buy this thing, it's so hot, I want to get it. Wait a day. Just wait a day. Just go home, buy it tomorrow, right? Because guess what? You probably won't. Um, and that doesn't mean go home and buy it online, buy it online either, because we can do that nowadays too. But just have the discipline to delay your gratification, right?
Um,
And that can be, I mean, that's another lesson that can be extrapolated to many different things, right? It's like you cannot claim that you're really good at managing your money, right? If it's like, oh, if I just had more money, I would be better off, right? It's like, no,
mhm.
if you cannot manage $1,000, what in your right mind makes you think that you can manage $1 million, right? It's just
Yep.
not going to happen. You're going to do the same things with more zeros tacked onto the end of it. I see it all the time. Um, and that's what this is about, like controlling ourselves, controlling our bodies, controlling right our minds and how we think of things and how we have our relationship with money. That's huge, right? Because if we control it, we will find freedom. We can use it as a tool. I'm not like telling you to put money on a pedestal. It's a tool. You wouldn't put a hammer on a pedestal, right? You wouldn't. Maybe if you finished a good project, I mean, that I'm really proud of, I might bronze a hammer and put it on my mantle. I mean, I might do
Yep.
that. So that's kind of a bad analogy, but a lot of businesses put like their first dollar up, right?
Yep.
I actually encourage companies to burn their first dollar and videotape it, right? Because easy come, easy go, right? As whatever it took you to get that dollar, it can go away like that, right? And that is a
Mm,
lesson that everyone needs to remember. If we're not stewards with our money, if we're not stewards with our relationships, if we're not stewards with our team, they will go away in an instant,
mm,
right? And it's very hard to get it back, right? With the ash of a dollar, you're never putting that back together.
yeah.
You can mend relationships, you can do that, but that takes a lot of time,
Oh yeah.
right?
And if the other person's even willing to do it. But I love, and you mentioned
Exactly.
it because you had talked about too the entire piece of skydiving, and that you can only skydive with others until you once you can skydive by yourself and actually control yourself. And then you tied it into how, if you can't manage $1,000, how on earth? And you said how would you ever manage $1,000,000? I was thinking like 10. Like what makes you think you'd be able to manage 10,000? And it's like taking that basic skydiving principle there, that if you can't manage $1,000, you're not going to be able to manage 10,000. And so
Yeah.
really getting good at a small basic level. And then it also, one of my mentors, he runs a very successful business, but he just said, he's like, man, it's the reason that most people can't do it and like run a really successful business is because it's too boring. Like being successful is really, really boring. It's doing the same thing over and over and over and over. And that's what throws people, is they can't take the boredom and the just the mundane nature of it, because
Yeah.
they want to go to that emotional, like I'm getting drawn to this other thing. And it's uh, tied it to personal finances. Just in my mind, that's where it went. It's like it's doing it is very basic, but that's why it's so tough. It's actually tough because it's basic, not because it's this huge grand thing.
Yeah.
So
I mean, look any and money, it doesn't matter how much you make. People do this across the board, regardless of what their occupation is. I mean, I can look at a certain number of physicians that are excellent at managing money, right? They make really good money, they're really good managers of it, they're killing it, right? I know other physicians that are making the same amount of money, but they are just not doing well because of that very thing. It's like, oh, I've been like living, I was essentially, you know, an indentured servant of the hospital when I was during my residency, and now I'm making some good money. And now it's like, now I'm in this thing. It's like, I'm getting this lifestyle creep where it's like, cool, I make good money. Now I'm going to, like, I deserve this thing. And it's like, I want to feel comfortable with my new salary and my position. And I want it to match what I drive, right? I want my car to match my current, how I feel, right? So then they take out a ridiculous amount of car loans to get Maseratis, right? And I'm like, dude,
mm,
what are you doing? You have school debt to pay off, right? That is 3 times expensive as that car. So now it's like just delay that gratification. And I'm not just making fun of doctors here, but we can, again, because you can do this applies to anyone, right? I almost got
right.
all my teammates killed in Afghanistan, right? I was not making doctor money, trust me. Um, but now we just control that impulse, live exactly how we were living, really manage it right, do the non-sexy stuff, the mundanes, like, okay, I'm gonna hammer this down, I'm gonna hammer this debt down. So then in 2 years, 3 years of making a really good income, now I can just really enjoy my life. And I'm very comfortable because I owe nothing to no one, and I make a great income, and I have a great stable job. And boom, now I've built my whole financial picture on a rock instead of on the sand, right? And that is biblical. The wise man builds his house upon the rock, not the sand. For when the storms come, uh, the house will get washed away that's on the sand. I don't quote me directly on that. That is, I'm paraphrasing there, obviously,
Yeah.
but the same, it holds true. Where if we just do the quick thing, if we just like, oh man, what is this Bitcoin thing? That is awesome. Like everyone's doing that. I'm gonna do that. When my like someone, it's just like it's just relax, do the basics, right? In EOD, we had an expression, be brilliant at the basics. That's the only way to survive. Um,
Mm,
and we have to apply that to our money, to our relationships, to jumping. I mean, everything. It's just like when you jump out, have good body position, right? I'm not going to jump out, and there's all kinds of different disciplines going head down, like, flying with your head towards the earth instead of on your belly, which is where everyone starts out on their belly. It's like you're not just going to jump out and go head down right away. You have to learn how to belly fly. You have to learn how to back fly. Then you have to learn how to sit fly. Then you learn how to head down, right? It's a process, and you don't just become ultra wealthy by not tracking your money, right? Ask any ultra wealthy person how much money they have coming in and how much is going out. I guarantee they know. Guarantee they can tell you right then and there when you ask the question. Like, not hold on, let me check that. They probably know a very close number to what is actually true.
Well, and that's getting back to, again, the core, the start of the conversation with skydiving, where you're taking videos and you have video proof, video evidence. And essentially, if you're not tracking it, you don't have that video evidence. You don't have the video proof of saying, look, this is what's happening. This is what we're seeing. And so just taking it back from what you were sharing earlier, we got the goal of personal finance, but how are you tracking it? Are you even aware of what your personal finances are? Because
Yeah.
it's really tough to do anything if you're not tracking it. And so I love that
Yep.
you tied that in, man. It's such a great thing.
Yeah. I mean, knowledge is power. We've all heard that. It's like been pounded into us since as long as we can remember, knowledge is power, right? The same thing applies to our personal lives. It's not just like what you learn at school. It's what is your personal financial picture, right? What is your snapshot? What does your situation actually, what are your living expenses? You're never going to save an emergency fund if you don't know how, like what your living expenses are,
Yep.
right? So it's like these basic financial principles, which is exactly what was killing me early on. And it's like, I was doing none of these things. I was doing none of these things, and I dug myself into a hole. It was a nightmare. And then once I just started doing these basic things, it's like, man, I can actually breathe here. It's like I was making good money as, a soft member, that was, I mean, constantly deployed. So it's like all the tax free and whatever. But I mean, I felt like I was drowning. But then once I was able to just really key in on basic financial principles, manage your money, keep track of it, spend less than you make. Um, these are all very easy concepts. They're very hard to execute, though, especially
Um,
when there's no accountability. Um, whether that's to you and yourself, or if you have outside accountability help as a coach, or just someone, right, that can help you in your corner that truly knows what they're talking about. Like, the biggest thing I see is other people taking like financial advice from people that are broke. I mean, it's like,
yep.
what are you doing? Like, why would you listen to this guy or gal where they have 3 car notes and they're living paycheck to paycheck? Why would you want rentals like them that they have to pay off every single month and they're vacant, right? Why would you
Yep.
want to do that? Um, it's weird, right? That's, yeah, it's, yeah. I'll get off my soapbox on that.
No, no, I think what is a great thing, and that's what I was going to ask. I mean, as we start to wrap this up, getting a good coach, getting somebody that actually knows what they're doing, is the key. And what are the ways? I know in the last interview you mentioned it. If you haven't listened to the last interview with Jay Lee, go listen to it. It's incredible. You guys hear his full story that he alluded to, and it's gave me goosebumps. But what are some ways that if somebody's listening to this and they want to get some personal finance coaching, how can they get in touch with them? What can they do to reach out?
Yeah. I'm practicing what I preach here. Alex Hormozy. One of the things that he talked about was just like make your free offering better than everyone else's paid offering. So that's essentially what I do now. Um, I'll give you a link. It's you sign up. It's a budget builder workshop. It's completely free. All you got to do is go to the page, sign up, like name, email. You will get a download for recommended budget percentages. So that's what a big hiccup, like people hit this roadblock first and foremost. Like, I have no idea what I'm even supposed to be spending money on for these little categories like food, gas, transportation, communicate. Like, what am I actually supposed to be spending money on?
Hmm.
These recommended percentages, you plug in your income, boom, and it calculates for you based off of percentages. It's not a dollar amount; it's a percentage of your income that you should be spending money on. So some of those things obviously will be a little bit different. For example, if you make $50,000 and you're spending 15% of that on food, if you make $300,000, you're probably not going to spend 15% of $300,000 on food, at least groceries. You might
Yeah.
go out a lot.
I was gonna say it's a
Um,
lot of fancy dinners.
yeah, you can eat steak a lot.
Yeah.
And that is the biggest budget buster. So sorry. So back to that, you would get that download. So you like literally takes the work and the friction away. You plug in your monthly income, your take home pay, and bam, this calculator that I've created spits out every percentage, like recommended percentage of
Mm.
category, budget category that you should be allocating your funds to. And then after that, you will schedule a budget builder workshop. So we'll take that data that is collected and that you put into the spreadsheet, and then boom, I will sit down with you for a one-on-one 30-minute budget builder workshop and actually look at those numbers and smash them out and get more of your information for your total personal financial picture. And you can take that and run with it, right? Even if you don't want any coaching after that, you at least have the tools now to just go win, right? If you just keep doing those things, right, that mundane thing of just exactly what
Mm.
that package gives you, you will win, right? But now if you want that accountability piece and you really want to dump gasoline on this fire that we've created, that's when the coaching continues, and we can pursue that at the end of that workshop.
Yeah, but I love it. But you're giving it away for free. I love that you're doing that because it's a
Yeah.
huge value add. It's a huge thing that would be so simple for somebody to step in, and that's why most people that don't do it. But I know that the listeners listening to this, they're going to be the ones that step in to do it. So if you are listening, head over to Jay's website. Again, if you want to throw it out there one more time, I just want to make sure everybody heard it. If they didn't write it down, I'll put it down in the link in the bio. And where can they get in touch with you?
Yep, excuse me. You can head over to goldencompassllc.com and
Okay.
you can schedule a session right from there, and all those things will, boom, be delivered right to you.
Beautiful. Jay, thank you so much. And I really appreciate you taking the time, putting all this work in. I really enjoy all of the conversations we get to have, man. So thank you for this.
Hey, it's not work if you enjoy it. Thank you, Thad, for having
Yes.
me.